Pat Smith joins us, 365 Sports, from the heart of the SEC, but also covering what's going on with the SEC meetings and much more. Again, with three-man front, WJOX, the monster out of Birmingham, Alabama. Craig Smoke, Paul Catalina, David Smoke. Pat, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. So you're right there in the middle of all that, and obviously covered the SEC. You've seen maybe a little bit of the blowback and Sankey this or Sankey that. What, from your perspective, is Greg Sankey actually trying to say?
Well, one thing's for sure. First off, always great to be on with you guys. Greg Sankey pays very good attention to what's going on outside the Southeastern Conference. And don't think for a second that some of the blowback that has occurred from the Big 12 and the ACC has not resonated with him. The folks that I am in very close contact with behind closed doors down in Destin, they tell me that absolutely that this is something that has been a minor story behind closed doors. That's why today there was a lot of discussion about a 5+11 model as opposed to the 4-4-2-2-1 model that everyone has criticized. So not really sure that anything is going to come to fruition in regards to everybody being in agreement once they leave Destin in about another 24 to 48 hours. But it's a situation that Greg Sankey absolutely has heard the clarion call from others around college sports in regards to those automatic qualifiers.
Pat, couldn't this stand to benefit them even more so than the automatic 4 qualifiers, the potential 5+11 model? Because that would give them unlimited amounts of bids as opposed to just the demand for 4 right out of the gates.
It's very interesting because what's going on is you've got the coaches. And see, this is one thing, and I'm not sure if this is the way it is in the Big 12 or other conferences. I can't speak for them, but I can tell you because I have covered this event in Destin for 25 years plus. And I'm just telling you, what happens is that the coaches come in. The coaches basically take the oxygen out of the room because these are the millionaires. These are the $10 million paychecks that these athletic departments have to write to these coaches. So they come in on Tuesday and Wednesday. They get on their soapboxes, okay? Then you have the athletic directors who then make recommendations to the presidents. Well, the coaches are out the door. They're on a plane. They're gone right now. This is when the real work starts. This is when the chancellors and the presidents get together because at the end of the day, they're the ones that make the ultimate decision of what's going on. So you had the coaches saying one thing on Tuesday. You had the athletic directors kind of disagreeing with their head coaches on what they were thinking because they're kind of comptrollers. They're looking at the bottom line. And then at the end of the week, it will be the presidents and the chancellors that will take the advisement of the coaches and the ADs to make the ultimate decision if they vote on anything. But yes, to answer your question with a long answer, absolutely the 5+11 model, based on history, would give the SEC probably more than those 4 automatic qualifiers that they would be given if they went with that model.
And it would give the Big 12 and ACC just a 1 guaranteed spot. So, like, man, for all of the complaining about the auto bids, like, there was part of me all last week and even in the months previous, like, 2 auto bids is kind of, I mean, like, it could be a good thing. And so, I don't know. I just find this very interesting. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't from the outsider's perspective. SEC is obviously fine from your perspective, but it's just interesting how that could work against them when that's what everybody was pushing back against just a few days ago.
Revive Superfood Smoothies. Pill, pour, blend, and enjoy. All within the comfort of my own home.
Revive Superfood Smoothies. Peel, blend, and enjoy. Fast and easy, and I'm out the door.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And when you look at this, there was that disconnect. And that was the most fascinating part to the early part of the week in the story down in Destin is how the coaches wanted one thing. But then you had the Trell Alberts at Texas A&M. You had Florida's Scott Strickland. They were both adamant that they wanted automatic qualifiers moving forward or they weren't going to vote on a 9-game conference schedule. Meanwhile, the Big Ten, they had a call today talking about the 5-11 model. And they would love to be in some type of schedule agreement with the SEC, but they said, hold the phone a second, guys. Unless you guys vote to go from 8 conference games to 9 conference games, We can't do that. Like, why would we add an SEC game to our already difficult 9-game conference schedule when you guys are going to stay at 8 and only add one other game? So we're still behind the 8 ball in regards to trying to, put up with what the SEC is trying to sell. So this is a very delicate situation. It's not going to be settled this week in Destin. The CFP executives are going to meet on June the 18th. I think the SEC is not going to have an idea yet what they want to do from an 8 or a 9-game schedule in conference, because they want to find out what the CFP wants to do before they decide that they're going to go ahead and jump in with both feet for the 8 or the 9-game schedule.
So going back to what you said about the kind of outside the SEC, the public pressure, do you think that is why maybe he's backed off the automatic qualifiers even more, even in the theoretical kind of Greg Sankey, pick your poison way? Either way, it works out for the SEC.
This is my opinion on Greg Sankey. Greg Sankey is one of the most calculated, the most detailed individuals you will ever meet in your life. Basically, what I thought has happened is that the ADs, the coaches, and the presidents, they're not all on the same page yet. So he wants to move forward with a 9-game conference schedule. He has been absolutely 100% behind that for years, but he can't get everybody else on board. They keep kicking the can down the road, because if you're a Kirby Smart in this league, Kirby's sitting there going, why would I want to play an additional 9th conference game when it's already difficult enough playing 8? And look at how 3 SEC schools last year got screwed out of the CFP based on their record. I'm talking about Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss. And again, we can debate who they lost to. I agree with that. But from a coach's perspective, they don't want to sign up for an additional conference game. Why would they want to do that when they feel like they have a difficult task now trying to get to the CFP, playing in the dogfight that is of the conference? So I think Sankey thought he was going to be able to get to Destin and be able to give all this data to everyone. We would sing Kumbaya. People would sing We Are the World, and we're going to move forward with a 9-game conference schedule. But the problem is the coaches don't want that extra game, and the ADs only want the game if they're going to be guaranteed the kind of payday that's going to help benefit them once this House settlement happens.
Pat, it seems, would it be fair to say like that Big Ten SEC scheduling arrangement is coming down the pipeline, and that's one thing that we can almost bank on 100% is going to be happening sooner rather than later? And what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. But it's not going to happen unless ultimately the SEC pulls the trigger on that 9th conference game. I don't think the Big Ten is interested. And so that's where the SEC once again had an opportunity this week to get their ducks in a row. Now, again, I'm going to use this as a caveat. Once again, the presidents and the chancellors, they're the ones that make the policy in this conference. They take advisement from the coaches in football. They take advisement from the athletic directors. But at the end of the day, as we know now in the world of college athletics, it's about the bottom line. It's about how you're going to be able to fund all your sports and be able to pay that $20.5 million out every single year to the student athlete and be competitive. So at the end of the day, we'll see if they come to some type of at least a gentleman's agreement behind closed doors that moving forward, the conference will move to that 9 conference games, maybe in the summer before you get that announcement, because they want to see what the CFP does first. You want to play your cards before you find out what the ultimate group in the CFP decides.
All right, so if you go to 9 SEC games and then you add a non-conference game against the Big Ten, that's 10. Some of those schools have natural rivalries that are pretty good football games. Does that just leave one of those gimmies left on your schedule that you put back in, November, or you know what I mean? Is that all that's left?
Well, it's very interesting because with all this talk about, okay, let's get into this agreement with the Big Ten, all of a sudden you have someone like a Shane Beamer at South Carolina going, hold on, time out. Let me see if I get this straight. You guys want me to play a 9-game SEC schedule. And by the way, I don't know if you look at this, but our out-of-conference end-of-the-year rival is Clemson.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you want me to play 9 SEC games, then potentially play Ohio State. Oh, and then, by the way, you got to play Clemson. And then I've only got one of these what we call in the Deep South as lettuce games or cupcake games, where you play the Tennessee Chattanoogas or the Mercers or somebody like that. Shane Beamer has got a legitimate gripe there. because you got Georgia Tech playing Georgia. You got Florida playing Florida State. Meanwhile, in my state, you got Alabama versus Auburn, so you don't have to worry about that. That's a conference game. That's the biggest game of the year between the two schools. But you do have those outliers there in regards to playing a non-conference opponent as supposedly your big rival game. So what happens to those games? Those are the type questions that a lot of people above our pay grades guys are going to have to figure out.
So, Pat, there was the big to-do with the College Football Commission that was announced, and then Saban just pours water all over it pretty much immediately. But Cody Campbell did seem to at least like make people a little bit nervous almost in a way of like, wait, what is this? And who's this guy? And where's he coming from? And all of that. And now it's on pause, and who knows if they'll ever revisit it. But from your standpoint, what was kind of the reaction to the commission? And do you think that maybe having somebody like a Cody Campbell, who's not under the banner, if you will, and has others' interest in mind, do you think that made people in the Southeast a little bit nervous that thing could potentially be something that does benefit others, or could be something that works against them at all?
Well, I think having Cody on that commission, if it ever came to fruition, would have been huge. It would have been great because he's giving a different perspective, I think, with the names that I heard bannered back and forth about that commission. It was a situation where I think that they were going to be able to get a really good snapshot at different angles of what's going on in college athletics. It was really bizarre. You had Trump coming to Tuscaloosa, Saban introduced him, and then all of a sudden everybody seems to be on the same page with this. And then very quickly, right after that, Saban started kind of dismissing himself and saying, we don't need a commission. I mean, we can figure this stuff out without having, all these meetings and doing this and doing that. He almost immediately started disconnecting himself from the whole process. Not really sure what happened behind closed doors. I'm not sure if it was Senator Ted Cruz, not sure if it was Senator Tommy Tuberville, because obviously those guys have been very outspoken in regards to guardrails and the things that need to happen in college sports. But yeah, it seemed like from the get-go, after Trump left Tuscaloosa, that Saban either wanted to be in Jupiter, Florida, playing golf or being on his boat than having to deal with a commission and dealing with the politics involved.
Pat, do you think that, to that question, but do you think Cody Campbell scared them a little bit? Because he's different. He's not for just consolidating everything into a little thing.
No, I don't believe so, because I believe everyone understands the snapshot in regards to where he's coming from. And obviously Nick Saban would have a completely different perspective. I don't think there was a rub at all in regards to who was going to be potentially on the commission that changed Nick Saban's mind. I just think that Nick Saban started seeing this turning into a political football. And Nick Saban did a very good job in 17 years in the state of Alabama of trying not to be political. I know that his best friend was Joe Manchin, the longtime senator from the state of West Virginia, who was a Democrat who ended up being an independent towards the end of his run as a senator from West Virginia. But he stayed out of the politics in the state of Alabama, and that's probably always a good thing, unlike Tommy Tuberville, who's my senator from the state of Alabama. And now there's rumors that Bruce Pearl might take over for Tommy Tuberville, because Tuberville announced yesterday he's going to run for governor of the state of Alabama. So I don't know what it is with all these Auburn coaches wanting to get into politics, but that's what's going on in my neck of the woods.
Pat, of what you consider top line schools across the board, financially, tradition, whatever, what they have available to them with the new college athletics in the House settlement, whatever, is there somebody that is more fragile than others? When you think about, for example, the dudes, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, LSU, Oklahoma, if they get kind of back together again with what they've done over the years, is there somebody that could be a little bit fragile?
That's a great question. I can tell you this, that obviously with Texas and Texas A&M in this league, I don't need to tell you guys about those two programs and the kind of money they have. But what I can tell you is that schools like Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn, they were very slow out of the gate. And if you think about it, the way Nick Saban ran his program, it was all about selling the NFL. It was about, look, you come here, we'll develop you. You will make millions of dollars once you're drafted in the NFL. Well, you guys know kids now just as well as anybody. They want it now. They don't want it 3 years from now. They want their money, which they're given that right to from an NIL perspective. They want it now as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, whatever the case may be. Kirby Smart was cut from that same cloth. So you had two coaches right there that was very slow getting to the whole NIL game. Auburn took them a year or two to try to get their NIL going in the right direction. And now LSU has spent a ton of money in this offseason. So I think in this new era of college sports, especially in the SEC and college football, you're finally getting the upper tier guys. I'm not saying they're ever going to get close to a Texas or Texas A&M, but at least the upper echelon of the SEC, they're finally getting those wheels churning in the right direction from an NIL. But the lower part of the league, that's the schools that you're kind of thinking they might have problems down the road about being able to at least compete on a level of the middle of the road in the SEC.
Pat, do you think, because there is this thought, and some on our show that are a part of the chat room or whatever, that when they decided to do that commission with Saban and then Cody Campbell from Tech, that maybe the SEC looked around and went, damn, this might not be good for us.
I never heard that. And again, I'm kind of insulated because obviously I'm in the SEC, literally miles away from the SEC headquarters. I never heard that. The thing that I kept hearing was the fact that Saban did not want potentially to be all involved in all the political machine that goes on with this. And on top of that, I think finally somebody, whistled in, whether it was the White House ear or some other congressional folks, that they wanted to give Senator Ted Cruz, Cory Booker, and the rest of those guys on Capitol Hill another opportunity to try to right this ship. And how much would that commission really have a say-so in regards to policy and what they do moving forward? So, again, from my perspective, I never heard that. Not saying that that's inaccurate or not true. It's just I never heard that from my neck of the woods.
Hey, man, thank you very much. Appreciate your perspective as always and the knowledge. I can't believe you didn't make it to Destin, though. It seemed like that'd be a good place to go for 3 or 4 days.
I will tell you, it's a fantastic place. I was there for about 20 straight years, kids playing ball, all that kind of fun stuff. And finally, it's just you know what? I enjoy covering it from Birmingham and having my people down there and giving me what's going on. But it is a beautiful part of the world. If you ever get a chance, I strongly recommend to go. It's a beautiful part of the world.
It is. Well, the Big 12's in Orlando, but we're going to be up in Frisco for Big 12 Media Days and just around the corner. So we're not where they're having their meetings either. Pat, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time as always. Co-host of Three Man Front, WJOX, the Monster flagship out of Birmingham. We appreciate his time.